My Master's Sandals, Chapter 13. Located in Sabana Perdida, the neighborhood where I live, certainly classified as one of the most dangerous in the Dominican Republic. A survey from 1985 showed that 98% of its economically active population, only 30% had permanent stable jobs. Most of them, including my father and I, were engaged in Shalpio, not having a permanent work position. Sabana Perdida is surrounded by the Victoria to the north, the Asma River to the south, the Yucca River to the east, and Villa Mella to the west. It was a Sunday of rest, and with my father we decided to spend the afternoon in the river. We began preparing some food early so that we could eat for the day. We created a dispenser with lemonade to refresh ourselves and to save money. We left intending to relax a little. After settling in a green area, I ran towards one of the banks to cool off from the suffocating heat, accompanied by the high humidity. For most of the year, the average temperature ranged from 20 to 32 degrees Celsius and rarely dropped below 18 degrees or rose above 33 degrees. That's about 75 to 89 degrees Fahrenheit. Without much thought, I launched myself immediately to plunge in the water without fear. It was a small outlet of land that formed like kind of a lagoon that allowed the waters to pass on the opposite side. It was surrounded by some medium-sized stones that calmed the current at its intersections. I felt the water immediately lower the temperature of my body. After enjoying the freshness from this few seconds, I opened my eyes and tried to surface by moving my arms the best style of a good swimmer. However, when I raised them, my hands touched the wall. That did not allow me to rise and get out. I started to feel trapped in a corner. I opened my eyes looking for some light, but everything was very dark. For a moment, my nerves were overtaking. My strength was dwindling, and it caused me to swallow more water than I could bear. Again, I thought that the worst was taking over my life, even allowing me to say goodbye to my father. He was on the shore waiting calmly without imagining the death I was battling. As in previous circumstances, when I was at the edge of losing my life, I felt a voice inviting me to be calm and to observe the light that came towards me. At those moments, I could hardly move. My eyes were heavy and my arms fell without responding. The voice insisted again that the light would come and told me to open my eyes. Feeling very weak, I made my last attempt to survive. The voice repeated over and over again to open my eyes. I was almost out of breath, and the water enveloped me in an infinite hug that did not allow me to escape this awful perceived fate. Again in the distance, I heard, "Open your eyes and be calm. The light is there." I felt like someone was actually with me. I opened my eyes with a lot of struggle. My numb arms, my numb arms managed to move a few centimeters, and my breathing seemed to stop. Then, from behind, I felt the current driving me to the surface, like the intense feeling of someone pushing me up. Like an erupting volcano, my body took off towards the light. The air entered with force into my lungs when I opened my mouth, looking for a long-awaited oxygen. For a few seconds, I was floating, holding the breath that made me recover my senses. No one had even noticed what had happened. My father was still there enjoying the weather and lying under the shade of a tree. Many people were on the shore refreshing themselves, completely unaware of me. I recovered my arms movement and I managed to reach relatively a large stone where I climbed up to get out. I sat for a long time without any thought, stunned from the incident. I kept watching the water lap at my bare feet until I managed to level my breathing. In the distance again, the voice that awoke me. Don't worry, nothing has happened. Everything will be fine. Everything will be fine. I stood up and my ears caught the message from the deep and still unknown voice that lived very close to me. From now, the voice was interrogated as part of the complicated and dangerous moments of my life, and I still could not decipher its origin. I strolled to where my father was, who, upon seeing me, got a massive smile on his face and addressed me. You having fun, son? I'm sure you are. After the critical stage in which we were taken care of and the hunger did not rule out the circumstances, I had an eye problem for which I needed an operation. Although the money we earned covered incidental needs, it was still not very encouraging to find out we would have to pay for surgery. We had conversations with the doctor and let us know that he could help us with the operation at a low cost. However, we will have to pay for the anesthesiologist separately. I stopped to think for a moment while sitting in the doctor's office, and we decided what to do. As if I was half crazy, an idea occurred to me at the moment. Since there's no other options to pay, I have to have the operation. I put the proposal on the table to have the procedure without anesthesia. Logically, I sought to avoid spending money that we did not have. Without a doubt, my suggestion to forego anesthesia called the surprise of the doctor and my father. He changed his grim face with concern and surprise. You must have gone crazy, boy. Where did that idea come from? He said to me in a very sarcastic tone. The shock on the doctor opened his eyes as if it was a bad joke, looking at me as if I was sick in the head. It is important to note that there have been real situations of operations without anesthesia, such as that of Alexander Bethel, a 36-year-old woman who underwent an appendectomy in the hospital in England. So I didn't see it entirely out of the question not to have anesthesia. Her body had been paralyzed by drugs given to her, and she slept and was incubated before surgery. The woman said she felt the prick of receiving the morphine and knocked her unconscious. A Canadian woman named Donna Penner underwent a laparoscopy, which consists of incisions in the abdomen. Her body was put to sleep for the operation, and she still felt the procedure, but did not react to the pain. However, both of these women were left with post-operation psychological problems and were treated for many years. As well-known Chinese general who suffered an arm wound in the confrontation was poisoned arrow that pierced through him. A well-known and highly regarded doctor of the time opened the wound and took out the poison. In general, in the middle of his operation, began to play chess with the soldier. The concentration needed to play the game made him stay without any pain to bother him. Very calmly, I told my father not to worry. If the doctor accepted my proposal for undergoing surgery with these conditions, I was willing to take the responsibility for any side effects or consequences. With a single smile, the doctor replied that it was very difficult to bear the pain of a surgical operation, especially keeping the eye permanently opened as long as it would take. Again, I chose to answer that would not be bothersome for anyone able to endure any pain. To my surprise of both, he told us that if we decide to go through it, it would be necessary to sign some documents that would make me responsible for anything. Legally, the surgeon could not take any responsibility if something went wrong during the operation, or if he would lose control. I accepted this, and my father was shocked. We went home with everything signed and with a date for the procedure to take place. My father talked to me about what I had done. To him, it seemed impossible for me to resist the pain of surgery of this nature, with much more dealing with one of my eyes. I only replied that I shouldn't worry and that he witnessed it would happen that day. I told him he should have patience and not to be scared of anything. I felt he should allow me to take everything into my own hands. My father repeated to me many times that I had gone crazy. The night, in the middle of my rest, a voice appeared. That strange but very presence became more and more frequent part of my life. I knew the voice would be with me. I never had the fear of facing the voice. What I did not know was how to do it. I tried several times to speak to it, trying to get it to appear. I even concentrated, but apparently it didn't work that way. Very clearly, as if it was very close to me, I would listen to it and tell me that I had nothing to worry about. The decision I had made was most convenient to solve my vision's problem. I assured me that absolutely nothing that I could think of fear would occur. The interactions between the voice and I took place very naturally. I was getting used to the idea that I was not alone. The prognosis situation presented itself to me continuously before others. I was aware that the conditions could affect me to the point of even death. However, I did not feel any fear in the moment of making the decision that could affect my body. I had many days of engaging words with my father. He tried to convince me that I should speak to a doctor and find a realistic situation. Of course, I kept what I had arranged, and nothing was going to change my decision. Father talked to me about the risk and what it would cause him to feel if something happened to me. I listened to him without flinching. I just told him to be calm, that everything was under control. The day the procedure came, my relaxed mind showed peace that came from within me. In a few minutes, I was facing what would be my first experience of this type. My very nervous dad watched as he entered the room with the doctor preparing for surgery. A nurse accompanied us, very kindly inviting me to get comfortable on a kind of sofa. The doctor asked me a few questions, and I answered with great certainty. There was no reason for them to object to continuing because the confidence I showed was enough. After taking my shirt and putting it on the hospital gown, I was ready for the operation. The same question that started the questionnaire came up again. I would like to know if you are well. It is only for security. My response was rapid and forceful. Doctor, do your job. Don't worry, I'm ready. Naturally, he explained to me again that I was going to feel pain from the incision, and I knew everything was going to be fine. Of course, the voice that presented to me times like this appeared without even having a chance to think about it. I was never afraid, especially on the occasion with my attitude of showing myself with great serenity, temper, and abundant resistance. terminated. Given the doctor's skill and knowledge and the nurse's attentive care, the operation was carried out. I was focused on avoiding any type of pain. I did not know that there were other options other than everything will be okay. To me, nothing could exist other than a complete success. I trusted fully, and I was sure that what I've heard in that voice, as it had always been right in the past. I felt secure with it. I knew that I would discover something more at this point, but I did not understand that. My father was the one who was alongside me during all my anguish and joys. He worried a lot when some mishap came to us, especially something to do with money. In this particular year, there was no lack of work. However, there was much less food on the table because of needing to pay for my operation. I left with a patch covering my eye along with the recommendations of some days off from work and some medicine. I walked out next to my father, who calmly accompanied me, staring at me the whole time. Before leaving, he had asked the doctor many questions, had the same answer. Don't worry. Everything went well. Your son will recover soon. My Master Sandals, Chapter 14. My older brother had worked at an Italian-American production company called Flavia Films, dedicated into making films with different characteristics. The director liked the landscape he found in the Dominican Republic, and he found them suitable for filming a new story. When they were about to start production, my brother became ill with appendicitis, so he recommended me to be his substitute. The director accepted, and I started a new work adventure. The work fascinated me, and I had dreamed of working on a movie since I was little. Given the knowledge of my electricity, I started as a light assistant on the set. This was the job that I carried out with great enthusiasm and joy. The director said that the filming in my country was economically profitable due to low cost in all aspects, from staying there and production as well. In 1989, I participated in the filming of The Killer Crocodile, shot entirely in Rio Amas, directed by Fabrizio De Angelis, and produced by Larry London. The script was made by the director, incorporating music by Rizzo Orlani and photography by Sergio Diofenzi. The movie was about the story of a giant crocodile mutated by reacting to the thousands of toxin residues that had commemorate the water where we lived. Also in it, a group of ecologist researchers that set in researching the site and attacked by an animal that turned into a beast. There was struggle with people opposing the crocodile's extermination. The film was released in Italy on July 31st, 1989. It was later shown in the United States, where it had great success. The second movie was continuously recorded the following year. The Prognosis with Richard, Anthony, Serena, Sherry Rose, Van Johnson, and Eno Girolami, with the producers who got the film Bye Bye Vietnam. In addition to Kryborg with his famous actor Henry Silva. Each filming lasted around 4 to 5 months. We worked 15 hours a day on an average of 6 days a week. The actors plus the filming group were staying at the Sheraton Santo Domingo, where I had the opportunity to work years later. During this time of my life, I learned new things, which added to my previous experience. For example, because I understood electricity, I became assistant to the director of photography with time. In there, that when another experience again touched the reason for this experience. The production group had stayed and continued making new adventure movies. This time, a series change. We were being implemented for one of the scenes, which would take place in a swimming pool. When that time came, an assembly would be made, making the water appear as if there was an act at sea. Live fish, certain other elements were introduced for the objective to develop approximately. In my job as the electrician's assistant, I was assigned to move cables. I had to carry them, lift them over my shoulder so that someone else would receive them from the other end and hook them so they could be held high. I had to carry them across a small, shallow pool. In those times, human materials were used to produce special effects in movies, unlike a computer-generated graphics that are used today. Two relatively high poles at each end of the set held the cables. The first was connected to the electrical box, and my job was to take them to the other side so that they would be ready to lift and get to the scene that the director requested. Many people around waited for the connection to continue. As I entered the water, carrying it on my shoulders, holding them with both hands, everything went smoothly. As I advanced, I stumbled on an odd fish that had crossed between my legs and had traveled halfway across with the sun beating down on me. The warm atmosphere of my country pushed me to redouble my efforts. I stopped so that my companions could loop the cables from two ends of each pole, lift them, and hold them above the water. 4 people, 2 in each corner, did that while I waited. All of a sudden, one of the front of me lost balance. The other tried to hold him, but the weight unbalanced them. The terminals connected to the electrical box left me fall behind into the water. Everything was out of control. At that moment, I closed my eyes and a disturbing sensation shook my body. In the distance, the voice said, "Nothing is over. Let yourself be guided." That last thing I heard in the horrifying screams that faded with time. A thick shadow enveloped my mind, regaining static, and everything went dark. For a second time, the voice appeared. Before I could open my eyes, it said, "Nothing is over. Let yourself be guided." I could not specify what happened in those seconds that the accident occurred. I only remembered that when I opened my eyes, a group of people raised the cables. At the same time, another yelled to see if I was okay and to make sure the electrical current was gone. I kept looking around. All the staff had positioned themselves at the edge of the pool. Still, without showing any strange symptoms, I turned my head a little and asked myself what happened. Excuse me. It was crazy to think about what electrical current should have done to me. I saw dead fish floating in the pool. That was something that amazed me, yet for another moment. Perhaps my companions were just as confused when seeing me alive in the pool, but surrounded by dead fish. No doubt their despair was quite noticeable and expressive, but I used to be unaffected. After a few minutes, the second eternal, I returned to reality. I felt alive without being able to explain why. I watched all of my colleagues keep yelling at the time to get out of the pool as soon as possible. They seemed to be experiencing more panic and anxiety than I was. I began to move forward, holding the cables still in my hand. I avoided every fish that crossed my path while still seeing the entire production body, including the director. When I got out of the pool, the questions of amazement were those that lasted the rest of the time I was with them. They could not believe I was alive. With approximately 20 American dollars, I decided to get a visa and travel to Haiti, a country that borders Dominican Republic. My stay in the Puerto Plata, where I stayed with my father for a long time, was coming to an end. Many things had happened to me. For a time, I began to investigate whether doing some sales business would benefit